Today on Fieldgulls Football Snapshot, I wanted to discuss the death of the running back. But as with any sort of sweeping, broad discussion like this, I believe the past is prologue. And so, as the media sort of puts this topic on the table, they mean it as the position is losing its value, and that it's no longer as effective as it used to be, or passing offenses have become so dynamic that you no longer need this sort of balanced approach to running. And you've seen running back by committee sort of come back from where it used to be. But in order to really approach this broad discussion and reach where we are now, we need to go back to when, just before the NFL became more of a pass-oriented league, or you saw that become more commonplace, teams ran the ball as their primary mode of offense. When you saw teams put 4 wide receivers on the field in the early to mid 80s, they were seen as wide open, passing, crazy offenses. These guys were mad scientists. They were really just innovating football, but they were a little crazy and you didn't know where they were coming from. You know, it's the ultimate, past versus the future kind of argument there. But because passing offenses weren't as common, you didn't carry nearly as many wide receivers, and you didn't carry as many tight ends as you may well have. So, back in the earlier days, you carried more running backs than you do now. Around usually about 4 or 5 plus a fullback, maybe even sometimes 2. So you'd carry maybe 4 running backs and 2 fullbacks. But really, you did carry a lot of different guys, and those guys were your specialists. Where now you have wide receivers that are possession receivers, and you have speed receivers. You had those kinds of guys rolled into the running back position. You had good receiving running backs, good guys that were good runners, guys that were good, pass blockers. It was really a very different scene back 20, 30 years ago. So with the advent of free agency and the opening of the passing offenses, you saw the running back position get slowly chipped away at until now we have an average of 3 running backs on a roster and no fullback. So where you used to have guys that would get split 150 touches between the 2 or 3 different guys behind the primary back, now the primary back was picking up all of the slack of that. So now you had primary backs from like 96 on that were just rewriting the record books on the sheer numbers of touches they were getting. And because of this, you saw the value of the running back explode because the production was crazy. So you could get a running back overnight and your offense was considered average, and put a good defense around it, and you had a good playoff team at that time. So lots of teams, what you would see then, it started putting the dynamic running back athlete into the first round, where some of those guys may not have made teams, way back when for certain reasons. Running backs that did really good in college and had like one dynamic stat at the combine all of a sudden found themselves in the first round. But now, as the dynamic thing to have is a quarterback that can throw for 5,000 yards, we've seen a shift away from the running back getting that ideal primary back, and now we've seen them rebuild a running back system by committee, very much like they had in the 80s, where guys are specialists. And you're seeing a lot of teams go to a 2-back system, which was commonplace back earlier in the league. But I think here's where the death part comes in. I think you're going to see, now that we've seen salaries for running backs collapse a little bit, going from 9.8 million in 2000, I think it was 2008, the average salary for the top runners in the league was 9.8 million. It is now 7.5 million in this latest free agent market. And you're seeing the time frame, the longevity of the running back collapse, where back 30 years ago you'd see running backs that were 31, 32 that were still reasonably effective but may not have had the efficiencies of today's running backs. The longevity was there. You had time to get a couple of offers from other teams. But now you're seeing a lot of running backs, done by 29, maybe 30. You don't see a lot of guys over in their 30s in the league. In fact, I think right now there's only 2. So I think what you're going to wind up seeing, with all of that said, is that the dynamic athletes that would have been running backs are now going to search for other positions to play, whether it's linebacker, whether it's, safety or corner, something else that is more lucrative, or they may avoid football altogether because you've only got, if you're a 22-year-old kid and you play under your first contract, which is out of the first round, so let's say 4 years, you've only got maybe 2 or 3 years to make good money at this position when you could make good money for 5 or 6 years at other positions. I just think you're going to see a lot of those athletes start to look at that and start to look at other more lucrative situations for them. So with that laid out, I'd like to hear your comments, and also I wonder if you guys might have a thought as to where this type of thing may hit next, in terms of the next set of players that may be targeted for a longevity reconsideration or a monetary reconsideration. Okay, thanks.